We're here at the kever of Rav Moshe Isserles, the Rema, the father of Piskei Ashkenaz. Next to him is buried his father, Rabbi Isserles. So we call the Rema Rav Moshe Isserles. Isserles is a derivative from his father's name. That's where he got the name Isserles from. We have over here Roya Even Yisrael, the shepherd, the stone of Israel, B'yom Gal, on the 33rd day, L'mispar b'nei Yisrael, Gala kavod mi Yisrael. The honor has been exiled from the Jewish people. Moshe Haya Roya Tzayin Yisrael. Rav Moshe Isserles was the shepherd of the sheep of Israel. Tzidkos Hashem aso mishpata l'Yisrael. Hirbitz Torah b'Yisrael. He proliferated, disseminated Torah. Hamid Talmidim Revavai Salafim. He spread Torah to tens of thousands. And we have, of course, the famous words, Mi Moshe ad Moshe lo'ikam k'Moshe b'Yisrael. From Moshe, from the Rambam, or from Moshe Rabbeinu until Rav Moshe Isserles, there never was a Jew like this. It says, "V'zois Toras hachatos v'Toras ha'oila asher sam Moshe lefnei bnei Yisrael." A play on words that the Rama wrote the Sefer Toras hachatos that we're going to learn. The Sefer Toras hachatos was a codex of dietary laws modeled on the Sharei Dura of Rabbi Yitzchak of Duren. And by the way, we're going to see Reb Chaim ben Betzalel, the brother of the Maharal Prague, had a critique on the Toras Hachatas the Rama. The Rama also wrote Toras Ha'ila, which was a philosophical work about the Avodah, the Beis HaMikdash, and the Karbanos. So let me just share with you, we mentioned that the Rebbe Muvok of the Rama was Rav Shalom Shachna. Rav Shalom Shachna gave the Rama his daughter to marry, and she passed away soon before even Rav Shalom Shachna, and ultimately the Rama married the daughter of Rav Mordechai Gershon Katz, who is the father of the She'eris Yosef. In 1550, the Rama comes back here to Krakow. He makes a tremendous yeshiva. He pays out of pocket for the expenses of the yeshiva. And in 1553, the Rama is accepted as the Av Bezdin of Krakow. So let's just mention some of the names of his Talmidim, his better known Talmidim. You have Rav Mordechai Yafa, the Lavush. You have the Rabbi Yeshua Felek HaKoyen, the Sma. Rav Hersh Shar, the Rebbe of the Bach. You have the Maseis Binyamin, Rav Binyamin Salnik. Rav Menachem Tiktin, the father of the Shlach HaKadosh, Rav Avram Horowitz. Rav Chaim ben Betzalel, the brother of the Maharal of Prague. Well, the Rama was a Talmud of Shalom Shachna, and being so, he was an enthusiast of the methodology of Pilpul. We mentioned yesterday that the Rabbi Yaakov Pollack instituted this methodology of Pilpul in Poland. His student of Shalom Shachna was a major disseminator of this mahalach, this approach, and the Rama was an enthusiast of it as well. But one would never know from the writings of the Rama that the Rama was an enthusiast of Pilpul, as the Rama always focused on the halachic aspects of Talmudic study. Now, aside from learning halacha, which we'll come to soon, the Rama immersed himself in the study of medieval Jewish philosophy and Kabbalah. And he had a unique position that philosophy and Kabbalah could be fused together, and the differences between them were just semantics. But the Rama held that philosophy and Kabbalah were similar, and the Marshal criticized the Rama for taking such a strong interest in this, and especially in secular studies. And as we mentioned yesterday, the Marshal also was not in favor of the type of grammar that the Rama was using in his Sefer, which the Rama defended himself by saying that he was using the common expression, and the Marshal says to the Rama, you'd be better studying Hebrew grammar than learning philosophy. Okay, but what the Rama is well known for, and his great contribution to the Jewish people, are his Hagois on Shulchan Aruch. Rabbi Yosef Karo, we know, adopted the practices of the Sephardic communities, and therefore his codex was not really usable for the Ashkenazic communities, until the Rama added his supplement to Shulchan Aruch, called the Sefer HaMapa. So the Shulchan Aruch was a set table, and the Rama's comments were considered the tablecloth. So this is a very interesting point. That until the Rama came along, the Shulchan Aruch was just the individual expression of one Yachid in halacha. when the Rama wrote footnotes on this halachic work, he elevated the codex of the Shulchan Aruch to an authoritative halachic codex which would be accepted by the entirety of the Jewish people. Now this was no longer just the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, but this was the collaboration of two all-time giants together to formulate the official halacha for all of Klal Yisrael. I want to point out that the Rama in the beginning of Orach Chaim, we know whenever the Rama speaks, he says Haggah. In the very beginning of Orach Chaim, he says Haggah, he says a sentence, and he says Haggah a second time. Why does the Rama in the beginning, you'll notice, in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, he says Haggah, and in the middle of him speaking, he says Haggah again. And the answer is, it is the derech of authors to allude to the name of Hashem in the beginning of their Sefer. Haggah has a numerical value of 13. By saying Haggah 2 times, the Rama is being merames, he's alluding to the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the beginning of his Sefer. Now, the Rama differed from the Beis Yosef in his approach to the methodology of halacha. While the Beis Yosef took 2 out of 3 of the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh, the Rama incorporated the views of the Balei HaTosfos as well, and he took the majority of all of their different opinions. The Rama often mentions, Al tazalzel b'minhag Yisrael, do not disparage Jewish custom. This was a theme of the Rama. For example, when it comes to banging by Haman, the Rama says, don't disparage that custom. All Jewish customs are firmly rooted in our ancient tradition. The Rama was the innovator of the following principle in halacha: hefsid meruba. Until the Rama, there is no such concept that for Ruvain it could be Asur and for Shimon it could be Mutter. The Rama developed this concept that something could be prohibited, but if it's going to make a person suffer a loss, there's more room for leniency. This was the concept that the Rama adjusted from the Gemara. In the Gemara, there are certain things that the Gemara says you're allowed to do it because of Hefsid Meruba, but across the board. The Rama sort of innovated this concept that depending on one's personal circumstance, the halacha may be adjusted, again, under the direction of a competent paisek. And Rav Chaim, the son of Rav Betzalel, the brother Maral Miprag, he challenged this concept. He felt the Rama took the concept of Hefsid Meruba too far. He also did not agree with the Taras HaChatas, which was a bottom line codex of what to do Lamaisa. The Rav Chaim ben Betzalel held that this is sort of tempting the scholar to do away with what we mentioned yesterday. There's the Eish and the Das, to do away with the halachic analysis and just getting to the bottom line. And he felt the Rama was only taking into account the Polish custom and not the German customs. By the way, Rav Yosef Shal Halevi Natanzan wrote a sefer called Toras Moshe to defend the Rama from the challenges of Rabbi Chaim ben Betzalel. The Taras Chatas is also accepted throughout Klal Yisrael, and many Sfarim have been written on the Taras Chatas, the Minchas Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov Reisher, the Damesek Eliezer, and we're going to get to the Tosfos Yom Tov. Tosfos Yom Tov wrote the Taras HaAsham to defend the Rama's Taras Chatas. The Rama wrote a commentary on the entire Zohar, which is still unpublished. Reb Chaim Mishal reports that the Rama wrote a commentary on the Hebrew translation of a medieval work on astronomy to instruct beginners in astronomy. And in fact, the Rama had a student by the name of David Gans who walked from Germany to learn from the Rama. And the Rama encouraged Rav David Gans to study history, to study astronomy, and we even have correspondence between Rav David Gans and Johann Brahe and another astronomer, Kepler, that the Rama encouraged his students to pursue knowledge of many disciplines as well. Now, a unique facet of the Rama's expertise was he was a proficient sofer. He received a tikkun, which is a manual for writing Sefer Torah, from Tzfas through the Beis Yosef, and he wrote a Sefer Torah that had 24 variances from the typical Sefer Torah of the time in Europe. It was deposited here in the Ramah Shul, and it was read from on special occasions until World War II. Now, the greatness of the Ramah is attested by the fact that thousands make the pilgrimage to the Ramah's kever on Lag BaOmer, his yard site, And what more do we need to say than Moshe ad Moshe like Moshe? He was a roya neman to Klal Yisrael. Zechusa yagein aleinu. Amen.